I'm sure I'm not the only guy who's done that over the years.
That's what everybody does when they walk in.
Some houses made you stare, not because they were big, but because they were bold. A roofline that looked hand-drawn, a turret that didn't match anything around it, brick and wood and angles that made no sense. Until they did. They didn't come from templates, they came from ideas, and sometimes from mistakes. Octagons with 8 perfect sides, domes made of triangles, homes wrapped in steel or dressed like castles. They weren't always practical, they weren't always pretty, but they were trying something. And for a while, we built with imagination, not for resale, not to match the neighbor's porch, but to see what could work. Some designs caught on, most didn't. Codes got stricter, budgets got tighter, and little by little, the bold stuff vanished. But if you've ever passed an old house that made you slow down, or wondered, why don't they build homes like that anymore? This one's for you. Let's start with the porch, where nothing ever happened. And somehow, everything did. A low roof, thick porch columns, and a front door with stained glass and stories behind it. The craftsman bungalow didn't shout. It welcomed you in with wood, warmth, and windows that actually opened. Born in the early 1900s, these homes were a rebellion against the frilly Victorian look. No turrets, no lace, just honest materials and handmade charm. You'd spot them by their deep overhangs and exposed rafters. Inside, built-in bookcases, cozy brick fireplaces, and little breakfast nooks that somehow made toast taste better. They weren't big, but they made up for it in soul. Everything felt intentional, like someone actually cared about how a home felt at 7 a.m. in winter. In California, they popped up like wildflowers. Pasadena, Burbank, Los Angeles. Entire streets looked like craftsman storybooks. But after the 1930s, the world sped up. Families grew, lots shrank, and builders wanted faster, cheaper, flatter. Craftsman homes faded quietly, some remodeled beyond recognition. Still, the good ones? They creak just right, smell like sun-warmed wood, and remind you that home used to mean more than square footage. Up next, a house built for the future, with a shape straight from the jet age. Flat roof, wide eaves, and a living room that felt like a spaceship waiting for liftoff. This was the Atomic Ranch. Born in the 1950s, when America was chasing modernism and the moon, these homes traded frills for flow. One level, open concept, floor-to-ceiling glass. The outdoors didn't stop at the door, it came in. Driveways stretched like runways, carports instead of garages. Inside, sleek furniture, sunken living rooms, and walls that didn't dare get in the way. It wasn't just a house, it was optimism in wood and stucco. You could almost hear the hi-fi spinning and smell the new upholstery. Even the light felt different, brighter, cleaner, full of promise. But the future moves fast. By the late 60s, people wanted more privacy, more insulation, more upstairs. The ranch faded into the rear view. Some were torn down, others boxed in by second floors and remodels that dulled their edge. But find a preserved one? It's like walking into a Jetsons set with better landscaping. Next up, a home so narrow, the front door practically touched the back wall. But what it lacked in width, it made up for in warmth. One door in, one door out, and every room lined up like boxcars on a train. That was the shotgun house. 12 feet wide, maybe. Living room, bedroom, kitchen, no hallways, no nonsense. According to legend, you could fire a shotgun through the front door. and the blast would fly clean out the back. But behind that joke was real history. Their roots stretch from West Africa to Haiti to New Orleans, born from traditions shaped to cool, protect, and endure. Raised off the ground, aligned doors, high ceilings. They weren't just cheap, they were cooling systems with shingles, painted bright, trimmed with lacework. They turned cramped into character. And when you walked through one, you could hear life happening, dinner sizzling in the back, music humming from the front, and a screen door clapping somewhere in between. But over time, they fell out of favor. Too small, too narrow, not enough room for modern wants. Many were torn down, but some still stand, especially in New Orleans, where restoration meets reverence. The next house didn't save space, it spent it. On trim, towers, and colors loud enough to whisper from the street. Towering turrets, gingerbread trim, shingles in 5 different shapes, none of them square. This was the Queen Anne Victorian. It didn't whisper, it performed. Built in the late 1800s, these homes were part theater, part architecture. Every corner had a flourish. Every window dared you to look in. Colors? Wild. Wraparound porches? Required. A little stained glass by the stairs? Why not? No two looked alike. Even the roof lines zigzagged like they were sketched by a dreamer with a ruler and a sugar rush. Inside, grand staircases, curved walls, rooms built for hosting, not hiding. These weren't just houses, they were status symbols. The more complicated the trim, the more people knew you'd made it. But style changes like the weather. By the early 1900s, homeowners wanted simpler, cleaner, cheaper, and Queen Anne's flair started to feel like too much. Some were stripped down, others were painted beige and called updated. But the lucky ones? They still stand, spun sugar and spires against the sky, and just when homes got loud, they reached for royalty. Stone, steep roofs, and a hint of England in the gables. A steep roof, a tall chimney, and wooden beams that looked like they held up the whole house, even if they didn't. That was Tudor revival. Built in the 1920s and 30s, these homes borrowed straight from medieval England, minus the moat. They looked like cottages out of an old storybook, stone on the bottom, stucco on top, and those half-timbered walls that crisscrossed like an old puzzle you couldn't quite solve. Inside, arched doorways, leaded glass windows, heavy fireplaces built to crackle and echo. They were cozy, moody, romantic in a way that made a thunderstorm sound like a feature, not a problem. And they stood out, especially in wealthy suburbs where everyone wanted something a little noble. But charming comes at a cost. The details were expensive, the roof lines were tricky, and after World War II, families wanted modern, not medieval. Some builders tried to fake it with cheaper materials, but the magic didn't hold. Today, the real ones are rare, still handsome, still haunting, and still looking like they've got a secret tucked into the attic. Next, we will talk about that one moment in the 1800s, where someone thought 8 walls were better than 4. 8 sides, one wild idea, and a floor plan that looked more like a compass than a house. That was the octagon. In the mid-1800s, this shape had a moment, a real moment. Thanks to a man named Orson Squire Fowler, part architect, part phrenologist, part "you just have to trust me," the octagon house was pitched as the future of efficient living. 8 walls meant more natural light, better airflow, more usable space. And if that wasn't enough, Some even had rooftop cupolas and built-in water systems. They were ahead of their time, and a little off from the start. Builders hated them. Corners were tricky. Materials didn't line up. And furniture? Good luck with a sectional. Still, a few got built, scattered like curiosities across the Northeast and Midwest. But by the early 1900s, the fad had faded. Most people just wanted a house that didn't need a geometry degree. Today, the survivors are part home, part legend. Strange, stubborn, and unforgettable. Coming up, a house with a roof that bent like a barn, and a story even stranger than its shape. Still here? Then maybe you've sat beneath rafters that creaked in the wind, or lived in a house where the porch told its own story. Drop "I remember this" in the comments if one of these homes brought something back. And if you're riding with us all the way to the last house, type "It's home." That's how we know you're one of us. If this walk through wood, stucco, and steel has hit the spot, tap that like button and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Because up next, we're headed to a home that wore a barn roof and left behind one of the strangest real estate legends in America. That curved roof, like a barn, got dressed up for the suburbs. That's the Dutch colonial revival. It showed up in the early 1900s, borrowed from the homes of early settlers, but reimagined with warmth and symmetry. The roof was its signature, a soft curve called a gambrel, wide enough to give you a full second floor without looking like a tower. Add a centered front door, shuttered windows, and maybe a dormer or two, and you had a home that felt solid, calm, and lived in. It didn't need to shout. It looked like it had already seen a few winters and knew how to handle them. These homes became suburban staples in the 20s and 30s. Reliable, comfortable, more apple pie than art piece. But after World War II, tastes shifted. Builders wanted clean lines and cheaper roofs. The curve was too complex, the nostalgia too slow, and little by little, the Dutch colonial disappeared from new construction. Still, drive past the house at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York, and you'll see the most infamous Dutch colonial of them all. Now, this next house didn't try to feel like home. It dared you to call it one. No paint, no trim, just walls like bunkers and windows like afterthoughts. That was brutalism. Born in the 1950s, this style didn't care if you liked it. It wasn't there to charm you. It was there to stand. The name came from the French term béton brut, raw concrete. And that's exactly what it looked like. Slabs, angles, geometry with a grudge. While most brutalist buildings were public, libraries, universities, city halls, some houses joined the movement too. Boxy, heavy, often gray. They looked less like homes and more like fortresses. Inside, minimalist to the core. No crown molding, no cozy corners, just space and silence. To some it was bold, visionary. To others, ugly, depressing, unforgiving. By the late 70s, the mood had shifted. Brutalism became a symbol of urban decay, and neighborhoods started pushing back. Some homes were demolished, others disguised behind stucco and siding. But a few remain, unapologetic, unchanged, still standing like monuments to a time when architecture wasn't afraid to be difficult. Now, if concrete was the armor, this next house came in sheet metal. It looked like a giant appliance parked in the middle of a neighborhood. That was the Lustron home. After World War II, America had a housing crisis. Too many families, not enough homes. Enter the Lustron Corporation with a bold solution. Houses made entirely of steel. Walls, ceilings, even the bathtub, enameled metal from top to bottom. You didn't paint it. You wiped it down like a fridge. The whole thing came in a kit, over 3,000 parts delivered by truck and bolted together on site. And inside, built-in cabinets, pocket doors, even a washer-dishwasher combo. Because why not? It was modern, minimal, and totally alien. To some, it felt like the future. To others, sterile, lifeless, too quiet. The company ran into trouble fast: delays, debt, and red tape. By 1950, Lustron was bankrupt. Only about 2,500 homes were ever built, but a few are still out there, shiny, strange, and unmistakable. They creak when it rains, echo when you speak, and remind you what happened when someone tried to build a house like a machine. Up next, we will talk about the house that skipped the flare and built the blueprint for a whole generation. A square footprint, a square roof, and 4 rooms on every floor, like someone hit copy and paste. This was the American Foursquare. Built between the 1890s and 1930s, it was a no-nonsense answer to the over-decorated Victorians that came before it. No spindles, no towers, no drama, just straight lines, sturdy bones, and a front porch wide enough to fit 2 rocking chairs and a newspaper. Inside, functional, familiar, living room, dining room, kitchen, parlor, neatly divided and ready for everyday life. They showed up everywhere: Chicago, Cleveland, Kansas City. You didn't build a Foursquare to impress. You built it to live in. Some even arrived by mail, pre-cut kits from Sears or Aladdin, shipped by rail and assembled by hand. But as the decades rolled on, their simplicity became their downfall. Design trends moved toward ranches, then split levels, and the humble Foursquare faded into the background. Today, you'll still spot them in older neighborhoods, modest, boxy, built to last. And if you grew up in one, you'll remember the way it echoed when someone called from upstairs. Now, after all of these straight lines, we have one last curve. It looked like a spaceship landed in the middle of the woods. That was the geodesic dome, all triangles, no corners, just a curved shell that felt more like a planetarium than a place to hang your coat. Popularized in the 1950s by Buckminster Fuller, the dome was pitched as the perfect home, cheap to build, strong enough to survive a hurricane, and energy efficient by design. Inside, one giant open space, no right angles, no normal walls, just geometry and sunlight and the constant feeling that you were living inside a theory. Some people loved them. They felt futuristic, optimistic, like the world could still be reimagined, one triangle at a time. But domes were hard to build, even harder to furnish, and impossible to explain to a contractor with a tape measure and a deadline. They peaked in the 70s, then quietly disappeared, shelved next to other ideas that dreamed too big for their budgets. Still, a few remain, weathered, weird, and wonderful. Tucked in forests, perched on hills, like reminders that not every home has to follow the rules. They weren't just houses, they were ideas, big ones, weird ones, ones that didn't always work, but still mattered. Some tried to fix the future. Some just wanted to make your house feel like home. And even if they're gone now, a few porch posts still lean, a few turret windows still catch the sun, and somewhere, a door still creaks open like it always did. If one of these brought something back, drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe so you don't miss the next trip back in time. Stick around for more, because here at Remember This, the past isn't just history, it's home.